All right. So what you want to do is to identify what are the most critical gaps in your processes, in your day to day. What are your single points of failure? You want to understand and what. So what I mean by single points of failure, for those of you who don't know what that means, is that if something, whether it's a team member, whether it's software, whether it's a process, whether it's a partner, if they were to go down for the count, okay, would that be such a seismic event that everything else in your company grinds to a halt? So, for example, this slide deck is specifically about e-commerce, right? So, products. You need products to sell in e-commerce. So, if your freight forwarders leaves you out to dry, then if you're scrambling along to find an alternate freight forwarder, but you've got anywhere from 500 units to 50,000 units backed up in China, backed up in, say Guatemala or Mexico, how are you going to bring it over to the US? Okay. So a lot of people say customer service is important, and I get that. Customer service, typically speaking, with all things being equal, everything working smoothly as expected, yes, customer service is very important and it remains important. But if you do not have products, if you don't have inventory to sell, what are you going to do? Okay. So identify your weak points, especially from the supply chain side. So your warehousing, okay? Even if they're not 3PL warehouses, if you use warehouses for specific needs or functions, or you have warehouses, or you've partnered with warehouses where you don't need 3PL needs per se, okay? Um, and you only have one company you're working with, they only have one unit out there. You've got to have a backup plan with a second warehouse, a third warehouse provider for you. Okay. Now, for as far as fulfillment providers concerned, you've been relying on somebody for the last several years. We don't know what's going to happen in Q4 2020. Providers that have been reliable can not ignore, but their services can be turned off at a moment's notice just because they are filled to the gills. They are up to their neck on what they can handle. Okay. So, as far as 3PL warehouses are concerned, do you need to find somebody else as a backup? Do you need to start envisioning and to remap your supply chain process to be able to accommodate that? You need to start costing, you need to start predicting and projecting your costs of every little piece of the puzzle for a supply chain process to accommodate these alternate options. Okay. Trucking has also been a huge pain point. Okay. So previously, you may have relied on your freight forwarder to do your trucking for you. Okay. They could be a one stop shop for you where all you have to do is tell them, hey, this shipment is ready. And go ahead and go pick it up from our usual factory partner. And they'll do that. They'll manage all the local trucking that's local to the factory. They'll manage the loading onto the boat, and then the boat comes over and it docks and it goes through customs and it unloads and it transloads and then they truck it out to your favorite fulfillment partner. Okay, but we have seen trucking partnerships fail. And again, it's not because of disappointment. It's just that there's a bandwidth issue. There's no more trucks available to pick up your product this week, next week, for the next 4 weeks. Okay. We've seen this personally. So, just a related side note though. If it takes 4 weeks to find a truck, and it takes 4 weeks for okay, so it takes four. Let's say the only option you have is for finding a truck to do last mile delivery. Takes 4 weeks. Okay, then they pick it up they pick up your inventory 4 weeks later. They drop it off at the dock at an Amazon distribution center, and then the Amazon distribution center takes another 4 weeks to check in. That's 8 weeks. That's 2 months. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, how can this ever happen? But we've seen pieces of that happen. We've seen trucking appointments for 4 weeks out. Nothing available on the calendar for 4 weeks out. We've also seen Amazon FBA check-ins take 2 to 4 weeks. If those two were to happen together, that's 2 months of your inventory sitting in your warehouse, in your transloaded warehouse, just waiting. Meanwhile, your account's not generating sales. Okay. It's not easy. COVID-19 has thrown us a huge monkey wrench for sure. Okay, so the next thing to consider, so identify ways to plug the gap. So relationships, okay? Relationships meaning finding new 3PL providers, okay, as a good backup, finding new warehouses, finding additional truckers. Again, it's not about you buying new trucks. It's just option B in case option A is unavailable for you anymore, okay? Head count, if you need to hire more people. Maybe you do have your own trucks, okay? Processes. Oh, so another weak point is processes. So just like we talked about at the February meetup about weaknesses in processes and spending time to optimize it. Sometimes your processes, and this has happened again with what we've seen in the last few weeks. Sometimes the processes are not flexible enough. They cannot adapt well enough. Make sure processes are bulletproof. Okay. Make sure there's no gaps in handoff between one team to the next, one person to the next. Make sure it flows smoothly and seamlessly, because it's happened to us before, right? Where it's nobody's fault, but somebody does something. It doesn't get handed off to the next reasonable team member or team to pick up the ball and keep moving forward with it. But something in the process broke. Is it really the two people to blame, or is it the process? Okay. Software. So if there's this one, we've been a fan of one piece of software, a kind of like a sales dashboard platform for several years. And for the last half of 2019, it was just really buggy. It was not reporting the right data, and we dropped them. But given the circumstances in Q4 2020, I should back that up. So given the circumstances in 2020, you want to have software that works, that should prove out to provide you services that have a greater success of working during Q4 2020. Okay. All right, so the last point on this slide is time is of the essence. You have to act now. If any of this material triggered any sort of potential ahas, weak points, things you needed to get to, you have to find time to assess it right now, assess what are the biggest priorities, to try to test all your options, and then to iterate lightly and quickly. So iterate creatively, okay, as minimally and lightly as quickly as possible.